Hi, Pat. Two things on Jeff Driskel. What'd you like about his game against Pittsburgh? And in your experience, where does a backup improve the most after getting those valuable reps?
Yeah, I think what I liked the most was he was tough. He stood in there. Um, he generally executed what we wanted to get done. He had some mistakes, certainly. And some of that is because, as you come in as a backup, there's times when you don't really get many reps during the week. You do get the reps, but not to the degree the starter does. And so you got to work your way into it. Took him a little bit to get settled down, but, I think even though there were a few bad plays there, I mean, he really made some really good throws. What comes to mind are the two corner routes to Noah, one for a touchdown, one for a big gain. The rail route he threw to the halfback, Melvin Gordon, for a touchdown, right? The deep ball to Cortland. Cortland was in the sun, but by all rights could have caught that step in stride and scored. There's another deep ball to Jerry Jeudy. It was a little bit contested, and so he made some really fine throws. And then there's some mistakes in there he's got to clean up. And the thing I like about him moving forward, so that's that last week. The thing I like about him moving forward is he's very tough. He's very tough. He's very physical. If you haven't walked up next to him, he's a big man. He almost looks like a tight end. And so that will serve him well moving forward. I think he's got a pretty good feel for what we want to do. And now he's getting all the reps. So I expect, he'll be a little bit sharper early on. He kind of found his way a little bit, aside from having some things that went wrong, but looking forward to working with him moving forward.
Next up, Nick Kosmider.
Yeah, Pat, I wanted to ask you your impressions of KJ Hamler and his NFL debut. Tim Patrick had mentioned to us that when you guys watched back the film, he was really physical. So just your impression on kind of what he put together out there this week.
Yeah, the first thing that comes to mind for a guy of his stature is not physical, but I'll tell you the one thing about him is he's quick and he's shifty, and he did what we saw in college when we drafted him. He could be difficult to cover at times one-on-one, and then he's fast. And then the thing that you don't notice just watching him play is when a rookie gets in there, you're worried that the stage is too big for him. It's not. I mean, he's a super competitive guy. He was into it. He was on top of all his assignments, and he's super competitive. And that spirit, his competitive spirit or that toughness that Tim talked about really kind of shows up. So, the thing for him is, again, he's a rookie. He was doing it for the first time, and unfortunately, he hasn't had a lot of practice. The only significant practice time he's had was last week, getting him going, and then with, Cortland maybe in, maybe out, we had to bounce those guys around, and he handled being bounced around position-wise pretty well as well. So much like Driskel, I look forward to seeing him kind of build on some of the good things he did last week and try to eliminate some of the mistakes.
Next up, Brian Christoph.
Coach, I have two for you. The first is when a guy gets thrown in there, and I think we saw it with Herbert in L.A. where he finds out right before kickoff, and obviously Jeff comes in with an injury. Does sometimes adrenaline allow them to just get out there without thinking versus spending the whole week where they now know they're the starter, or are you still always better off having that prep time?
Well, I think prep is obviously better than no prep. I mean, or we wouldn't practice. We just pass out the gear on Saturday and go play. I think that goes without saying. In terms of the mental component to that, I don't know that. I think most guys will say they'll perform better if they're prepared. And so I think moving forward, that I think will help him in the long run. I don't know. Maybe there's a follow-up to that question, but, and probably some guys are different. I think that what kind of really defines what a really good backup quarterback is a guy that can go in and function with very few reps. And some guys are like that. I remember my years in Philly, we had Coy Detmer, if you remember, and he was Donovan's backup, where he could go in if he had to with very few reps and function, in kind of a mid-game setting, and so, and there's other guys like that too.
Well, yeah, Coy played his college ball up the road, so a lot of folks around here you remember. But my other one's actually receiver related, because I asked Jerry yesterday if he is ready to look at himself as the number one. He said he's just worrying about his own job. And I guess with him and Noah and KJ, With Cortland gone, do you kind of spread out who that? You're not going to ever say someone's the number one, but how does that work?
Yeah, I mean, that whole number one thingy that everybody talks about, I think that's something that gets talked about outside our building. He's one of them, and I think the ball needs to get spread around. And I think that's important, because if you only threw it to him, then the narrative would ring loudly. Well, why isn't Noah getting the ball? So I think it's very important that they all do their part. Some people will surmise outside the building who our best receiver is, and then wonder why, for whatever reason, they don't touch the ball. But everybody has to touch the ball. Everybody's got to do their part. And so I think it's way early for somebody, especially to start talking about ones, twos, and threes. Get open, we'll throw you the ball, and keep it at that.
Next up, Troy Rang.
When you're 0-2 and you play Tom Brady, you're at home. Is there a sense of urgency, given that history is not particularly kind to 0-3 teams, even with an added playoff berth? And is Coach Albert O in the mix to play this week? How close is he to getting involved?
Yeah, I mean, the urgency is the same every week. We don't do the math that way. And so I think the important piece for us is when Sunday's over and we're all sitting around having dinner, to be 1-2, and then we'll do the math beyond that and try to get to 2-2. And so I think that's the way we function in our building, and I think most coaches would say that. Today we got to make today the best Thursday. It's short yardage and third down. We got to get on point with that stuff. So I think that's our focus. Every week in this league, you play against very fine defenses and outstanding quarterbacks, and so the challenge is to find a way to win the game.
Got time for a few more. Next up, Jeff.
Pat, I'm just curious, when Driskel goes in the game Sunday, how do you work through in your own mind what plays he hasn't repped that you're still going to call? How do you decide what you think he may be able to do when you may not have even seen it?
Yeah, well, I'm not going to rep anything that he hadn't practiced, and I think that's the benefit of training camp. When you have 1,400 or 1,500 reps, he got a great deal of those, and then there's certainly things that we want to do this week against Tampa Bay that are good. So, we just don't draw them in the dirt, on the sideline. And so, we do that, we practice them, and then we get a feel for what he's good at. And, for a guy that's going into the first time, that list may be a little smaller than a guy that's been a long-time starter. But for the most part, we'll just try to do what's good against Tampa that he does well. And we got to try to get as many reps at those things during the week as we can.
Last two, Eric and then Zach. Go ahead, Eric.
Coach, in regards to Drew, in your experience with young quarterbacks, how difficult is that process of getting them to understand when you need to throw the ball away, when you can make a play that maybe you could make in college, but you can't at this level given the size and speed of some guys?
Well, they eventually learn it. I think that comes with playing. But I think the important piece is to develop fundamentals, stick to the fundamentals. And, for quarterbacks, you got to be tough, obviously. But, obviously you can't do anything about injury. You got to be tough. But you also got to make good decisions. You got to have a sense of timing. You got to throw the ball accurately. Those are three things that are a must. And so that sense of timing piece is not only when to throw the ball, but, okay, now it's, things are not all lost, but I got to do something. I either got to throw it away. I got to run outside the pocket, clean myself, and gain yardage. Or, there's times when, the timing is such that, you just know it and feel it. And he has that innate ability. Young players tend to be, they think they're, a little bit more heroic than guys that have been through it. And so it just comes with experience.
Final one, Zach.
Hey, Coach, Noah Fant's been very productive in two of the halves so far and hasn't had a catch in the other two halves. What's been the biggest difference between those halves?
Well, I'd like to say he's been productive in two of the games, So in those other halves, we're trying to throw it to Judy, let's say. So, I mean, I think, you know, he's got, 9 or 10 catches, and he's gotten in the end zone twice, right? And, you know, every once in a while, you know, they'll do something to take something away, or you're trying to get to something else. It's kind of seems a little finite that it's by halves, but, you know, we do try to throw him the ball, and it's not that segmented where, you know, you go away from him. You know, and I do think if the guys are doing their stuff and he's really running good routes, you know, a couple times there was times when he was wide open that we could have thrown him the ball where the ball went downfield, right? And then there was a couple other times when we did try to throw it to him where he was covered and it should have gone underneath him. You know, so, you know, it's kind of all connected. I think right now a 2-game is it's a little small sample size to start surmising that type of stuff. But I'm really, and we're really enjoying working with him. And every day, even in practice, every event or every practice or game, you see him get a little bit better, a little bit faster. And, you know, he's got a bright future.